So as last weekend, the homily has two parts, because here at Seton we spend 2 weekends a year talking about stewardship. Last weekend, if you were here, I went through a list of some of the spiritual things we've been doing here at Seton the last year: baptisms and funerals and religious education, so on. So today, Dan Ryan, our trustee treasurer, is going to speak about the finances of the parish a little bit, the talent and the treasure. So here's part one. I first want to comment a little bit about the scripture, the gospel, because we cannot read the gospel from our mentality in the 21st century. We have to go and read that gospel in the mentality in which Jesus delivered it. So, first of all, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. We've all heard that, probably said that already. But Moses in the Torah, in Leviticus and Exodus, when he gave that law as the law of God, it was meant to cut back excessive retaliation, because that was the practice then, that if you killed my brother, I could kill your whole family. So when Moses gave this one, he was trying to restrain that excessive violence, retaliation, vengeance. And then, if somebody strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other. Now remember, that culture was extremely right-handed, because the right hand was used for eating and social interaction. The left hand was used for hygiene. They didn't have toilet paper, so they washed after a movement. So the left hand was considered dirty, unclean. Now think about it. If you're right-handed and you throw a punch at somebody, you're going to hit them on the left cheek. In order to hit them on the right cheek, it has to be a backward slap, which was not meant to be physical, it was meant to be an insult. And they were very much governed by insult and shame. If somebody takes your coat, give him your cloak. If a person would do that, it was considered excessive. The person enforcing it was considered to be excessive, and they would be shamed. Same with if you went into 1 mile, that was all that was permitted. To go 2 miles would have insulted the person who wanted you to do that. So it takes a different flavor than what we read into it today. I don't know if that helps, but that's a little start. Now, do not resist excessive force. And as I said at the beginning, it's bred into us human beings to be fair. It's part of our human nature. It's not going to go away. So if we're hurt, we want to get even. And when it gets even depends upon me. So if we are hurt in some way or another, injured, whatever it is, we want vengeance. And Jesus teaches us to be forgiving. So I got 3 items about forgiveness that maybe will help, I don't know. First of all, if you're hurt, we're encouraged to forgive. But remember that forgiveness does not excuse the injustice. It's not to pretend it didn't happen, but it's to respond to it in a non-violent way. That's the challenge. And many times to respond to a hurt non-violently is more difficult than if we just would strike out. Because when we strike out, it comes from an inner anger, an inner hatred that festers. And even if we do a lot of retaliation, that inner anger and hate still festers. If you're angry with somebody, they don't even know it. And the only person that's hurting is you, that inner struggle. And also, it's not an excuse to tolerate abuse. It's not an excuse that we have to tolerate everything that anybody does to us. No, we have to fight against abuse. But again, not violently. You have to be extremely creative to think about how to resist injustice and abuse in a nonviolent way. That's the first point. The second point about forgiveness when you're hurt is let it go. Let it go. Because as I said already, that festering only hurts you. And don't bring it up again. How many people in relationships, years after it happened, they still bring it up? Let it go. Don't carry a grudge because it only hurts you. And then the third point about forgiveness is remember that you have to remember that, look at the bigger picture. What happens to you today, probably in 30 days, you may not remember it. And they always say after a year, you're going to laugh about it. Let it go. And remember the Our Father, and if I think of it, I'm going to mention it when we pray it. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive. That as, that's the important word. That's what forgiveness is all about. So we think about people that have hurt us. Who are they? It could be a stubborn spouse, could be a relative that's insensitive. It could be a awkward neighbor or a co-worker. And why do we take offense? Usually it's because we don't understand them. We don't understand the experiences that they have had that led them to act like this. Maybe we fear them. Maybe they threaten us, they challenge us. And again, to respond nonviolently. I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I think he was a fine example of attempting to bring about some kind of justice without violence. I think he was an image of a modern Jesus. But remember that he, like Jesus, was assassinated in 1968. And it isn't interesting. He was the most hated man in America. But now we build statues to him, we have national holidays, but we still don't follow his advice. And I think the greatest example of this type of forgiveness is you parents. You parents. Think about your relationship with your children. Now, some children are not a challenge, but many children are. For you parents, sometimes your children hurt you, or they disappoint you, or they deliberately do things that you do not approve of. But when they come back, do you seek vengeance? Do you seek to get even? No. Most parents, without a second thought, will forgive. Many parents, when a child wanders away from whatever, they'll go after them to try to bring them back. That's the teaching of Jesus. Now, the challenge for us is, while we kind of do that naturally for those children and those extremely close to us, those we really love, is to open up the circle. To try to do that for that coworker or that neighbor or that relative that has hurt you. That's the challenge. That's what forgiveness is, from the heart. Don't try to get even. Don't bring it up again. Look at the bigger picture and let it go. Dan Ryan, please.
Good morning. My parents were both educators. In fact, my father was the dean of students at some challenging locations in Chicago's inner city. In fact, one year, right outside the public school at which he taught, someone stole our car. When your father is in charge of discipline, there are certain rules at your home, including strict attendance at 9:45 Mass every Sunday. I came home from college that first semester. It was a Saturday in December. My two best friends came over and we went out for a night out on the town. Knowing I was back under their roof and therefore their rules, I knew to let them know that I was running a little bit late. Unfortunately, I called at 3:45 in the morning to let them know that. The discussion was brief, very, very brief. I strolled in around 5 a.m., assuming I had 4.5 hours of sleep ahead of me. So I was very surprised around 7:30 when my brother said, "Get up. For some reason, Mom and Dad want to go to an earlier Mass this weekend." Now, I am particularly proud of some of the decisions I have made in my life, asking my wife Jennifer to marry me at the very top. Farther down on that list, much farther, has been my decision never to ask my parents why we went to that earlier morning Mass. I think we all know the reason for that. But what surprised me was how annoyed my brother was with me. Not because I had come home late, but because the implications were that he got several hours less sleep that night, and that made him unhappy. As we all know, being a member of a family has implications for your own actions. It doesn't just impact you. The same holds true for being a member of the Seton family. Our decisions to donate our time, our talent, and our treasure not only impacts ourselves, but the parish as a whole. Volunteering for various ministries or at the Fun Fest or financially supporting Seton enables our ability to spread our faith and impact our community. Last Saturday during confirmation, Bishop Haynes stressed the importance of being an active and contributing member of this faith community. And last weekend, Father Joe asked the question, what is the impact that a Seton is having in this area? As many of you know, Seton operates on a financial calendar that begins in July. Therefore, we have completed just over half of our fiscal year, and thus far, our income has remained stable. However, we are beginning to see the impact of inflation on our expenses. For example, both our property insurance and our energy bills are up more than 13% year over year, with our energy bill being close to $6,000 just last month alone. We have done many things to help mitigate those costs. You may have remembered several years ago I mentioned we installed LED lights, and those have helped significantly. But nevertheless, these are the types of bills, these unhidden costs of running a parish, and they are increasing. By far, our largest budgetary item are salaries. And while the accountants would call this an expense, I prefer to call this an investment in the health and sustainability of our parish. As the cost of eggs and the cost of living continue to rise, it's important and fair that we remain competitive with the salaries that we pay our very dedicated staff. Now, we are also sensitive here at Seton. We understand that all of us are seeing our own personal monthly basket of goods rise in cost, no matter what you're putting in your cart. Our hope is simply this. Please reflect on the role that Seton plays in your life, the life of your family, and in the fabric of this community, particularly our online community. The tremendous good that comes from this parish does not happen by accident, it does not happen by chance, and it does not happen for free. To keep the doors open, the lights on, and the message of Jesus being carried out costs well over $30,000 a week. As Father properly answered his question last week, this parish is known for its tremendous generosity. And I ask for you to prayerfully consider how, as a disciple of Christ, you can help continue his mission. And as a member of this Seton family, you can impact the extent at which we can all follow Jesus and serve others. A year later at Christmas, those two friends came back over and they gave my parents a framed picture of that now infamous payphone from which I had placed that call at 3:45 in the morning. It wasn't so much of a gift as a peace offering to them. Now that picture of the payphone is a reminder to my kids of what a payphone actually looks like. For me, it's a reminder of the impact that our actions have on one another. So I thank you for your time and your attention this morning and for all the gifts that you have given to Seton over the years. And as we head into Lent, please look for the mailer from the parish. And as always, don't throw it out and be as generous as possible in the days and weeks ahead.
He gets a round of applause.
Get out of here.